Hello, this is Ali welcoming you to the 2220th edition of the Enfield Talking newspaper, Dateline 30th of January 2020. The readers this week are Ali, Peter and Kitty, with Hass on the controls. The editor was Phillip, and the production and distribution team is Lindsay and Jean. Our title music is Country Rock Polka, composed by Pat Prilly, Fernand Bouillon, Harry Breuer, and performed by Jean-Jacques Perret, and is used with his kind permission. The local news stories that we will be reading come from the Enfield Independent and the Enfield Dispatch and are their copyright. The lead story this week is Gang Members Sentenced to 116 Years for Murder. Now, the sunrise and sunset times for the week beginning the 3rd of February 2020 are sunrise at 7:37 and sunset at 16:53. Now, Peter will read the first item of local news.
Gang members sentenced to 116 years for murder. 5 gang members have been jailed for murdering a teenager inside a hair salon while he was trying to save his friend. 19-year-old Kamali Gabidon Link was stabbed to death by the attackers after trying to save his friend, who had been stabbed 8 times and shot by the group. Tyrrell Graham, 18, of St Helens Place, Leighton. Sheareem Cookhorn, 21, of Park Lane, Tottenham. Jaden O'Neill Critchlow, 17, from Tottenham. Shane Lyons, 17, from Wood Green. And O.J. Hamilton, 17, from Edmonton, were all found guilty of Mr. Gabidon Link's murder following a trial at the Old Bailey last year. On Monday, January the 27th, the killers were sentenced to a total of 116 years in prison. They were members of a Tottenham-based gang who, on the night of February the 22nd, 2019, set off on bicycles towards Wood Green to search for suspected rival gang members. Between them, they were armed with 5 knives, a handgun and a shotgun. The night before the attack, the gang had parked a silver Peugeot 307 on the Broadwater Farm estate, which would become their meeting point before and after the attack. On approaching Lordship Lane, near the View Cinema Complex, the group first sighted the victims, who were with 2 others. After seeing the victims, the defendants immediately dropped their bicycles and produced knives and a firearm. Cookhorn fired shots at the victims. 1 bullet travelled through the open door of a store, narrow missing customers. The victims' group prepared for a fight but changed their minds and decided to flee when Cookhorn fired his handgun. But then the attackers began to chase after the victims, brandishing their weapons in plain sight. During the chase, the victims divided into 2 pairs. Mr. Gabidon Link and the other victim ran back towards their parked car, while the other 2 escaped unharmed. The defendants then returned to their bicycles and went back after the 2 victims. They soon caught up with the 20-year-old victim and surrounded him. The defendants attacked him, stabbing him 8 times and shooting him once in the buttock. However, their attack was interrupted when Mr. Gabidon Link, who had managed to return to his parked car, drove towards the attackers in an attempt to frighten them off. The defendants began to strike the vehicle's windows and windscreen with their weapons. Mr. Gabidon Link tried to escape by reversing his car, but got himself stuck when he reversed into several parked cars on Vincent Road. He decided to leave his car and ran into a hairdresser shop that was just across the road. The defendants followed him inside and left Mr. Gabidon Link with fatal stab injuries. Catherine Gold from the Criminal Prosecution Service said, "This is a tragic case of gang rivalry. A teenager lost his life that night and another was seriously injured. These sentences take some very dangerous young criminals off the streets."
Attacks on TfL staff on the rise. Attacks on Transport for London staff have risen by a quarter in the past 3 years, new figures show. There were 628 assaults on transport workers in the capital last year, up from 505 in 2016 to 17. A mayoral question by City Hall Conservative leader Susan Hall revealed. And while knife attacks remain rare, just one Transport for London staff member has been stabbed in the past 3 years. The threat is increasing. There were 35 attacks involving a knife or with a risk of knife violence last year, up by 84% since 2016 to 17, from just 19 incidents. On Tuesday, January the 21st, RMT Union, which represents TfL workers, protested outside the Transport Network's main office. Demonstrators at Palestra Building in Blackfriars Road, Southwark, called for action on workplace violence. RMT General Secretary Mick Cash said there was an epidemic of violence and crime on the Underground in particular. He said workers would strike if necessary to ensure their safety.
Crackdown on rogue landlords. Proposals will help to improve housing conditions. Rogue landlords could be fined up to £30,000 under plans to drive up the standards of privately rented housing. People will have to apply for licences if they want to rent out properties in the borough in a scheme drawn up by Enfield Council. The conditions of the licences means they will be expected to manage their properties and deal with disrepair and antisocial behaviour. If they fail to do so, they could be prosecuted or hit with civil penalties. 2 licensing schemes have been proposed, a selective licensing scheme and an additional licensing scheme. Selective licensing, which will apply to 14 wards, covers properties let out to a single household. Additional licensing for houses in multiple occupation, HMOs, where several people share amenities but are not part of the same household, will cover the whole borough. Just over a third of properties in Enfield are estimated to be privately rented after the sector's size tripled over the past 20 years. But the council says there is evidence of significant levels of poor housing conditions, deprivation, antisocial behaviour in privately rented accommodation. While the council is already able to carry out enforcement action against rogue landlords, it relies heavily on complaints from people living in poor conditions. The licensing scheme is designed to stop problems from occurring in the first place by ensuring homes are well maintained. While the scheme was backed by more than 85% of residents who responded to a consultation, support from landlords was considerably lower. Almost 3/4 of landlords disagreed with selective licensing, and more than half disagreed with HMO licensing. Licences will cost £600 per property for a selective licence and £900 per property for an additional HMO licence, and they will run for up to 5 years. A team of inspectors will visit properties to check they are being kept in good condition. The plans were agreed at a cabinet meeting on Wednesday, January the 22nd, meaning the schemes can go ahead if they are approved by the government. Cabinet Member for Licensing and Regulatory Services, Councillor George Sava, Labour, Hazelbury, said, "These proposals will improve housing conditions in the private rented sector, raising housing standards and improving the lives of residents." Councillor Mahtab Uddin, Labour, Upper Edmonton, welcomed the plans, but asked whether landlords might pass the fees on to tenants by raising their rents. Doug Wilkinson, the council's Director of Environment, said, "Through the extensive work we have done on research and benchmarking with other local authorities, there is no evidence to suggest these fees get passed on to tenants. Rent fees tend to be market-driven."
Linked to cladding firm is a blow for the Grenfell Tower survivors. A member of the investigation accepted a donation. Sadiq Khan has attacked the government's careless approach to the Grenfell inquiry after a member of the investigation was linked to the company that made the flammable cladding on the tower. Engineer Benita Mira was chosen to sit on the inquiry panel last month. She will work alongside Chairman Sir Martin Moore-Bick to investigate the North Kensington blaze. But Mrs. Mira previously ran an organisation which accepted a $71,000 donation from the charitable arm of cladding manufacturer Arconic in 2017, The Guardian revealed. Grenfell survivors have questioned her impartiality and asked for her to be dropped from the inquiry. The Mayor wrote to Boris Johnson demanding action before the next phase of the investigation started. In a letter seen by the local Democracy Service, Mr. Khan described Mrs. Mira's appointment as another blow for the survivors, the bereaved and the wider community. Mr. Khan met with survivors group Grenfell United on Wednesday to hear their concern about Mrs. Mira's appointment. In his letter to the Prime Minister, he said that it was extremely worrying that the government's own checks had not identified the potential conflict of interest. Mr. Johnson met with Grenfell United earlier this month and promised to investigate the claims against Ms. Mira and stand her down from the panel if they were found to be true. Mr. Khan said, "I have no doubt that were Ms. Mira to remain in this position, this would lead to a loss of faith in the process from a number of bereaved families, survivors and residents, with a significant impact on the ability of the inquiry to serve the purposes it was established for." He added, "I have always said that the families and friends of the Grenfell victims and the survivors of the fire must have absolute confidence in the Grenfell Tower inquiry." The appointment of Benita Mira is another major blow for the survivors, the bereaved and the wider community, and epitomises the careless approach this government continues to take in the aftermath of this tragedy. A spokesman for the Cabinet Office said, "There are robust processes in place to ensure the Grenfell Tower inquiry remains independent and that any potential conflicts of interest are properly considered and managed." The Prime Minister met members of the Grenfell community on January the 16th and listened to their concerns about the inquiry panel. He undertook to look into the matter, and this is what he's doing. Phase 2 of the Grenfell Tower inquiry, which will focus on the role of the flammable cladding in the fire, started recently.
Concern over decision to use facial recognition. London police could face a court battle over their decision to use live facial recognition on the general public. The force announced on Friday that it will start using cameras to scan passers-by on London streets. But now Green peer Baroness Jenny Jones and civil liberties group Big Brother Watch plan to mount a legal challenge against the Home Office and the Metropolitan Police. Live facial recognition will scour video footage for matches with mugshots of criminals wanted for serious crimes like child sexual exploitation or knife and gun violence. The technology codes facial features as a series of measurements, calculating tiny details like the depth of eye sockets and the width between nostrils. This should allow it to identify the same person in CCTV footage. But a highly critical report by Essex University, commissioned by the Met last year, said trials in London were only 19% accurate, and the technology could flout human rights. Now Baroness Jones, a former Deputy Mayor of London under Ken Livingstone, and Big Brother Watch have instructed their lawyers to restart an existing legal challenge. The Green peer, whose photo was held on domestic extremism register while she sat on a board overseeing the Met and ran for the Mayor of London, said she feared that public safeguards were failing to keep up with the modern world. She said, "We have major expansion in the use of biometric data by the police, but without a public debate about what regulations and safeguards are needed. There will be inevitable mistakes and errors with using this technology, and innocent people will suffer the consequences." She added, "It is essential that the government call for a moratorium on the use of this technology so we can put a system of regulations into place." Big Brother Watch and the Baroness first raised concerns during trials of facial recognition technology in 2018, but paused their legal action when the Essex report criticised the technology. Met Assistant Commissioner Nick Ephraim said the new technology would be vital to tackle violence in the capital. He said, "We all want to live and work in a city which is safe. The public rightly expect us to use widely available technology to stop criminals. Equally, I have to be sure that we have the right safeguards and transparency in place to ensure that we protect people's privacy and human rights. I believe our careful deployment of live facial recognition strikes that balance." The use of facial recognition by Welsh police was challenged in the High Court last year. The court ruled in favour of the police, but an appeal will be heard in June. The Home Office was approached for comment.
Action plan to boost recycling rate. Figures show Borough failed to meet target. An action plan could be launched to boost the recycling rate in Enfield after it consistently fell below the council's target. The proportion of household waste sent for reuse, recycling and composting failed to meet the 37% target in the past 4 quarters of the municipal year, the latest figures show. Enfield Council is considering drawing up an action plan to improve performance, according to the authority's latest quarterly performance report. And the council says changes to the waste service, including a move from weekly to fortnightly refuse and recycling collections, are expected to increase the rate of recycling. The report, which went to Cabinet on Wednesday, January the 22nd, showed the most recent household recycling figure was 35.1%, down 1.8 percentage points year on year. It dipped as low as 29.3% at the beginning of 2019. Enfield Council's Deputy Leader, Councillor Ian Barnes, Labour, Winchmore Hill, told the meeting changes to the waste service had led to a 38% increase in demand for the customer contact centre. The council rolled out a weekly food waste collection service and an optional paid-for garden waste collection service in November. Fortnightly collections of domestic waste and recycling are due to begin on March the 2nd.
Police investigate 2 shootings. A man was shot in the leg as police investigate reports of 2 recent shootings. A man aged in his 20s was rushed to hospital after he was shot in High Road, Wood Green, at around 6:50 p.m. on Saturday the 25th of January. Met Police confirmed his injuries are not life-threatening. The High Road was cordoned off by police near the junction with Turnpike Lane, with police vans scattered across the street while forensic officers inspected the scene to gather any evidence. No arrests have been made yet in connection with the shooting. Meanwhile, the police are also investigating reports of shots fired at a similar time in Green Lanes. No one was injured. In response to both reports, police were granted powers to stop and search people in a specific area without giving a reason. Anyone with information about the shooting in Wood Green should call 101, quoting ref 6240/25th of January.
Social care services brought in-house. a company set up by the council to provide adult social care, is being wound up after less than 5 years. The council's top decision makers have decided to insource wholly owned company Independence and Wellbeing Enfield, IWE, bringing its services directly under the authority's control. It comes after the company struggled to compete with private sector providers and a high administrative burden. Enfield Council set up IWE in December 2015 to look after some of the most vulnerable people in the borough while raising income and saving money. One of the main ways it was supposed to bring in extra cash was by providing services to other councils. But a cabinet report says IWE has not been able to develop wider commercial opportunities in a social care market that is extremely challenged by many years of austerity. The report adds there are several social care providers in Enfield that provide services to other councils and the NHS, driven by low property prices. Competing with these firms would mean lowering IWE's staff terms and conditions, which the council was not prepared to do. IWE was also the council's provider of last resort, meaning it would step in when private care homes failed. While 3 out of 4 regulated services provided by IWE are rated good by watchdog the Care Quality Commission, inspectors spotted problems at one of the homes it runs, Bridgewood House Nursing and Residential Care Home in Enfield Highway. Bridgewood House opened in February 2018 but was rated requires improvement following inspections in April 2018 and August 2019. The latest inspection found the leadership within the home to be inadequate, and a warning notice was issued to the registered manager. Councillors agreed to insource the service at a cabinet meeting on Wednesday, January the 22nd. Councillor Alev Kazimoglu, Cabinet Member for Health and Social Care, said the recommendations are made in the context of very challenging financial environment for councils in the last few years. Bringing the services back in-house would simplify the governance arrangements and structures. Councillor leader Nezel Kalisgan added, "In most cases, insources demonstrates there are better outcomes for our residents, and the last decade has demonstrated that outsourcing does not save money for the public centre."
Rise in holiday lets, a big issue in London. The market is growing out of control. As many as 1 in 50 London homes could be short-term holiday lets, analysis by London councils has revealed. The local government organisation found almost 75,000 full properties listed on major short-term rental sites last month. Residents complained that some may be used as party houses or for sex work and drug dealing, London councils said. It comes as 56,000 households in the capital are in temporary accommodation, accounting for almost 70% of the net national total. Councillor Darren Rodwell, leader of Barking and Dagenham Council and London Council's executive member for housing, said the figures were ridiculous when so many Londoners are homeless. He said, although short-term lets listed on digital platforms offer benefits to some Londoners, the market is growing out of control. Boroughs are hearing more and more complaints about short-term lets linked to antisocial behaviour and even criminality. The priority has to be protecting Londoners' interests. That's why we're calling on the government to introduce much stronger regulation of this sector. In total, London Council found over 108,000 listings on Airbnb, Booking.com, HomeAway, HouseTrip, Nyumba and TripAdvisor last month, but excluded those where only a spare room was available. The organisation acknowledges that some properties will be listed for rent across multiple sites, meaning the total figure will likely be lower than 1 in 50. Richard Lambert, Chief Executive of the National Landlords Association, NLA, said the figures would include overlap, as it is common practice to list properties on multiple sites. He said some short-term rental ads would be sublets by tenants, which can cause problems for landlords. And not all properties listed will be used permanently for holiday lets. Mr. Lambert said many NLA members list properties to make cash back when they have an unexpected vacancy. But he admitted that he had seen an increase in landlords moving from long-term to short-term holiday lets over the past 3 years because the economics are better. Dan Wilson-Craw, Director of Renters Association Generation Rent, said the rise of holiday lets was a big issue, particularly in central London.
Students step up to help run cafe. Students are helping run a cafe to enable it to open an additional day during the week. 4 Year 11 students from Westley School in Edmonton have taken charge of Palmer's Greenery Community Cafe in Broomfield Park on Tuesdays under supervision. The cafe is a volunteer-powered, not-for-profit business that provides a space for the community to come together. The surplus money the cafe makes is reinvested back into the park and park-based projects. Sarah Cotton, co-founder of the Palmer's Greenery, said, "We have been able to build a partnership with Westley School that brings such great benefits to both parties. Westley is a special needs school for pupils aged 4 to 19. Their work experience with the cafe is part of its Learning for Life programme." Sue Tripp, head teacher at Westley School, said, "We are delighted with the positive impact our students are having, both in the cafe and subsequently the local community. Working at the cafe is a fantastic opportunity for them to develop real-life skills. The cafe is now open Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Saturdays and Sundays."
School's project gives nature a helping hand. A primary school has installed a living green wall in a bid to help the environment. Pupils at George Spicer Primary School installed the vertical garden of growing ivy on the Salisbury Road side of the playground in the hope it will reduce nitrogen dioxide emissions by up to 20%. The wall is also in place to protect the children from transport noise from the busy road near the school. Head teacher Dominic Spong said, "We are delighted that the living green wall is now installed. This has been something I have been very keen to see happen for everyone. Not only will it enhance the quality of air for the children, but additional green plants are always aesthetically pleasing in built-up environments. Thanks to Enfield Council for supporting this project." The Council has a commitment to become a carbon-neutral organisation by 2030 and for Enfield to contribute to the London-wide carbon neutrality. The efforts will be led by the Climate Change Task Force, headed by Enfield's Council's Deputy Leader, Councillor Ian Barnes. Councillor Barnes said a green wall is an effective, low-cost way of removing pollutants from the air our children breathe. However, as London continues to battle with high levels of air pollution, predominantly caused by road vehicles, we need to be looking at nimble, long-lasting solutions. That is why the Climate Change Task Force is building on progress we've already made as a council to reduce our carbon footprint and is introducing initiatives to improve residents' quality of life. Enfield Council's Cabinet Member for Children's Services, Councillor Rick Jewell, added, "Every child deserves to be able to learn and play in an environment with clean air. In addition to environmental health benefits, the wall will contribute to outdoor project-based learning and inspire critical thinking about the environment.
Council sets out homelessness strategy. An ambitious plan to end homelessness in Enfield has been approved by Enfield Council's key decision makers. The local authority will focus on intervening early to stop people from becoming homeless, so it no longer needs to place residents in temporary accommodation. It sees the private rental sector as a solution to the homelessness problem and aims to boost supply using the council-owned company Housing Gateway. Described as a step change in approach by council leader Nezel Kaliskan, the new Preventing Homelessness and Rough Sleeping strategy was approved by cabinet members last month. The report says the rate of homelessness in Enfield has soared by 250% since 2011, partly because of government welfare reforms such as universal credit and caps on benefits. Enfield has the second highest number of people in temporary accommodation in the country and had the fourth highest rough sleeper count in London in 2018. The main cause of homelessness in the borough is eviction from private rented sector accommodation. Council staff now plan to use data to identify residents who are at risk of becoming homeless and intervene at the earliest opportunity before problems start to snowball. Working alongside the voluntary sector, it will ensure residents have training and support before their tenancies start and are aware of their rights and responsibilities. Rather than paying private landlords incentives to let their properties, the council plans to fund the deposit and month's rent in advance for people who cannot do so themselves. Ending the use of temporary accommodation to house people who have become homeless is expected to save the council more than £1 million per year. Councillor Kaliskan said this is a step change. It is different to what the administration was doing and indicates we are going in another direction. Part of that is acknowledging the private sector is here and it is not serving residents well. We have to engage with the private rented sector far earlier than we do. What this strategy says is if you think you are going to become homeless, it is okay to go to John Wilkes' house and say you need help before you get an eviction notice. This strategy says prevention is the best thing we can do as a local authority.
Raising awareness of cancer. This is advice of free cancer awareness sessions which are now available for community groups from Emma Fridin from Healthwatch Enfield. Do you currently organise or attend a community group in Enfield or deliver services to local residents? If you think people in your group would be interested in hearing about how they can reduce their risk of getting cancer, get in touch and book your group in for one of our free Talk Cancer awareness sessions. Our fully trained facilitators can visit groups of 5 or more to deliver a 1-hour session to help your members learn how to reduce their risk of getting cancer, learn why early diagnosis is important, and learn about NHS screening programmes. At the beginning of 2019, we spoke to more than 600 of you about your knowledge of cancer awareness. Half of you told us that you wanted to learn more about prevention awareness through face-to-face events in Enfield. We listened to your feedback, and these sessions are the result. Last year, we worked alongside Enfield Council and Cancer Research to develop our Talk Cancer programme and deliver interactive cancer awareness sessions within the local community, just like you asked. Over the last few months, we have travelled across the borough, hosting Talk Cancer sessions, and have been attending local community groups and social groups to help Enfield residents learn more about how to reduce their risk of cancer, the importance of early diagnosis, and to make sure they understand the value of the cancer screening programmes the NHS currently provides. Feedback on our sessions so far has been positive, with almost all attendees reporting that the session helped them learn more about cancer, while also giving them the opportunity to ask questions and dispel any myths that they may have about cancer. This year, we want to make sure that all local community organisations in Enfield have the opportunity to attend a Talk Cancer session. So don't miss out. Book your session today. Dates are available until May 2020, and our fully trained facilitators will adapt our session to the needs of your group. For more information about booking a Talk Cancer session, call 020 8373 6283 or email to admin@healthwatchenfield.co.uk.
Cockfoster Station car park plans revealed. Designs have been revealed for the proposed block of flats at Cockfoster Station. Connected Living London, CLL, a partnership between Transport for London, TfL, and the developer Granger, wants to build up to 370 homes on the tube station's car park in 4 blocks up to 14 stories tall. 14% of the new homes would be classed as affordable. While parking spaces for Blue Badge holders would be retained under the plans, the remaining car park space would be built on. The Build to Rent scheme, one of several housing projects planned for tube stations across London, was first announced in June last year and has since attracted significant local controversy. More than 2,300 people have signed a petition set up by Cockfoster's local area residents association, CLARA, calling for the development to be stopped. The main concern is the impact upon commuters who travel to the station by car. Surveys carried out by TfL show 3/4 of the people who use Cockfoster Station car park travel in from outside the M25, with less than a fifth coming from Enfield and Barnet. Around 95% of car park users have a rail station closer to their home than Cockfoster's, and TfL claims the development would cut down on car journeys. It would also provide new public spaces, trees and greenery, as well as improving pedestrian access to nearby Trent Park. Ben Tate, head of Build to Rent at TfL, said the development will provide hundreds of new homes that the capital desperately needs. He added, "The homes are being specifically designed to provide housing for those who wish to rent rather than buy, helping meet a growing demand." Local people can have their say on the plans at givemyview.com/Cockfosters. The scheme will need approval by Enfield Council before work can begin.
All set for the country show. The Legends of American Country is coming to the Millfield Theatre, Edmonton, on February the 12th for a fantastic night of toe-tapping country music. The 2020 tour will showcase highly acclaimed tributes to Dolly Parton, Johnny Cash, Don William, Patsy Cline and Kenny Rogers, and new tributes to icons Hank Williams, Charlie Pride, Glenn Campbell, Tammy Wynette and Jim Reeves, with countless other well-known hit songs in this must-see musical extravaganza. Now seen by over 300,000 fans live and watched by millions on social media, Europe's multi-award-winning country music show features 4 fantastic singers who are all accompanied by a live band of musicians with that authentic sound coupled with authentic stage set and state-of-the-art production that will transport the audience hand-clapping and toe-tapping to Nashville and back in one night. One thing's for sure, if it's country music you like, then this is the only show in town which has received more than 2,000 5-star reviews and, last April, won the Hot Country TV Award for the Best Country Show in Europe. Tickets for the Millfield Theatre show on Wednesday, February the 12th, are now available from the venue box office on 0208 807 6680 or online at www.millfieldtheatre.co.uk. It is set to be the country gig of the year, so get the Stetson and cowboy boots ready.
Award for Deaf Teacher. A deaf primary school teacher has been commended for her outstanding contribution to teaching. Alicia Allen impressed judges at the Teacher of the Year Awards with her confidence and ability to inspire children at Brimsdown Primary School. She teaches pupils using a combination of British Sign Language and lip reading, with many becoming fluent in signing as a result. Alicia was presented with the Special Contribution Award at the Teacher of the Year ceremony hosted by Maths Hub London North East, a programme involving around 600 schools, which helps to lead improvements in mathematics. Deputy Head Teacher Eleanor Painter, who nominated Alicia, said, "The children absolutely love learning sign language. Not only does this create a really inclusive environment at the school, research has shown it can help with language and speech development." Alicia said, "It's an absolute honour and a privilege to have received this award."
A notice from Edmonton 100 Historical Society. Next meeting, Wednesday, the 19th of February, 7:30 for 8, Jubilee Hall, Parsonage Lane, Enfield, EN2 08J. A talk by Mike Brown on the Bayeux Tapestry. We all know that the Bayeux Tapestry, which is not actually a tapestry at all, tells us about the Battle of Hastings. Actually, the tapestry tells us far more. Generally regarded as one of the greatest works of art, if not the greatest, of the early medieval period, it gives deep insights into everyday life of that period. In his talk, Mike Brown will look at what the tapestry actually is, who made it, how, when, and most interestingly, why. He looks at a dozen named people, the unanswered questions. For example, how did Harold die? A truly great artwork, a marvellous source of historical evidence, and a perfect example of self-aggrandisement, propaganda, and hidden meanings. The Bayeux Tapestry is the ideal example of how familiarity breeds contempt. Hopefully, the talk will rekindle an appreciation of this 950-year-old treasure.
Emphatic win secured. Salamis thrash MK Robins. New Salamis bounced back from their previous week's surprise defeat to London Lions by beating Milton Keynes Robins 5-1 away from home on Saturday. The win moves Salamis above the Robins in the Spartan South Midlands League Division 1 table and closes the gap on second-placed Winslow United. Robins took the lead after 11 minutes when George Shreves smashed a half volley over the Salamis keeper, but 2 goals in as many minutes shortly after the half-hour mark put Salamis into the lead. Before the break, the visitors added a third when a ball into the box was missed by everybody and then tapped home at the far post. Robins were reduced to 10 men at the start of the second half, and 2 further strikes wrapped up the points. The side were preparing to face Stotfold on Tuesday as the Enfield Independent was going to print.
Town conceded twice late on to suffer home defeat against Cray. 2 late goals condemned Enfield Town to defeat as it lost 3-2 at home to Cray Wanderers in the Isthmian League Premier Division. Town won the reverse fixture of Saturday's game 5-3 back in October, and it was another entertaining affair this time around. Charlie Allen had Cray in front at the break before Ryan Blackman and Billy Bricknell scored within 4 minutes of each other to turn things around. But Allen levelled with 8 minutes to go before Jay Leader struck Cray's winner in stoppage time. It was a cagey affair to start with, as both sides looked fragile under any sort of pressure. But Cray were having all of the early opportunities, although their long-distance strikes were rarely causing problems for Nathan MacDonald. Tom Phipp and Lee Lewis were both kept out for the visitors, while at the other end, Bricknell fired narrowly wide and Ken Charles scruffed an effort into Lewis Carey's hands when well positioned. Lyle Della Verde and Sam Youngs both tested Carey in the away goal, but found their efforts comfortably kept out. Minutes later, though, Wanderers took the lead when Mark Weatherston was caught out by a long ball over the top, which Allen latched onto, and he lobbed a finish over MacDonald to give his side a narrow half-time lead. Enfield made an improved start to the second period, stringing some good passing moves together, and they got a deserved equaliser on 56 minutes when Della Verde cut the ball back from the byline and Blackman was there to steer home. 4 minutes later, Town were handed the chance to turn the game on its head when Ben Mundial needlessly brought down Charles in the area and Bricknell stepped up to convert. The hosts had numerous opportunities to extend their advantage, but Young's effort went the wrong side of the post and Bricknell blazed over the bar when Della Verde was well placed in the middle. The game's turning point came in the 77th minute when Blackman picked up a second yellow card, leaving Town with the tough task of seeing the game out with 10 men. They were dealt a blow almost immediately when a shot from Rhys Murrell Williamson ricocheted into the path of Allen and he forced the ball over from close range. It looked as though the game was heading for a draw, but a late corner for Cray resulted in Leader climbing above everybody to head home and snatch the winner at the death. Defeat left Town 8th in the table ahead of their forthcoming trip to Margate.
Ignatians beat Finchley to go 11 games unbeaten. Hot run of form keeps pressure on leaders. Enfield Ignatians extended their unbeaten run to 11 games in London, 3 Northwest, with a 40-15 win away at second bottom Finchley. A first half brace from Johnny Dixon, coupled with a Liam Horn try, had the visitors in front at the break, and although an early try in the second half closed the gap, Ignatians rallied again and went on to win comfortably through Dave Gear, Jack Bates and Jonathan Hamilton. Things did not start the way Enfield would have planned, as with just 11 minutes on the clock, Finchley cashed in on some poor defending to score a try and a penalty. Ignatians steadily found their feet, though, and they ran in 3 tries before the break. Some deft build-up play allowed full-back Dixon to go over after a fine return pass from Carl Azari Anderson, and the visitors then fashioned a pushover effort from a maul, with Horn peeling away and bursting over the line. More ill-discipline from Finchley cost them a further try before the break, as quick hands from Dixon allowed him to go over. Finchley's centre finished off a good move at the start of the second half to bring them back to within 4 points. Again, though, Ignatians produced a good response, and they pulled away when Gear ran in from 30 metres. Their 5th try of the afternoon came when Ewan Rennie picked up a loose ball and got his side upfield, and the ball was eventually recycled for Bates to go over. Hamilton then finished things off late by darting over from a scrum. Next up for Ignatians is a home game against Finsbury Park this Saturday.
Borough go 3 without a win after Ampthill defeat. It is now 3 games without a win for Enfield Borough after they lost 1-0 away at Enfield Town recently. Ben Butler scored the only goal of the game for the hosts, who climbed above Borough in the Spartan South Midlands League Division 1 as a result. The result leaves Enfield 11th in the table, 2 points behind Ampthill and 10 adrift of Rayners Lane in 7th. The single goal proved to be enough for Ampthill to take the points, with Butler heading home in his first goal of the season early on. Borough had chances to draw level, but their recent lack of productivity in front of goal was on show again, with just 1 goal scored in the last 3 matches, ironically coming after putting 7 past Brimsdown in their first game of the new year. Next up for Borough is a home encounter against second place and in-form Wilmslow United this weekend.
100 years ago in the Edmonton 100, loss of memory. On Monday evening, a woman about 30 years of age was found wandering near the Bell Inn, Enfield Highway. She was apparently suffering from loss of memory, as she could give no account whatsoever of herself. The woman, who was taken to the Edmonton Infirmary, wore a wedding ring and was respectably attired, but was without a hat. She has been identified as a resident of Edmonton. Amazing what the lack of a hat can tell you about someone. And this is Electric Light in Enfield. The Enfield District Council decided on Thursday to ask the North Metropolitan Electric Power Distribution Company at once to erect 6 400 candle power half-watt lamps in the town and Church Street. 2 small brackets are to be fixed onto the post, each to carry a 25 candle power lamp, which will automatically switch the high candle power unit on to the low at midnight and so minimise the cost. The company has also been requested to submit a scheme for the lighting of the whole remainder of the district, including Hadley Wood and Cockfosters.
We have reached the end of our programme for this week. Thank you for listening. So, from the team of Peter, Kitty and Ali and Hass on the controls, it's cheerio.
Goodbye.
Please remember to turn over the address label in your postal packet, put the memory stick into the packet in a closed position, and return it to us as soon as possible in readiness for the next edition. Don't forget you can call Diane de Jersey regarding any help you may require in connection with Enfield Talking Newspaper on 020 8805 6578. Coming up next, the latest news and information for the Greater London area from InfoSound. The Enfield Talking Newspaper will be with you again in 1 week's time.
News and information about living with sight loss. From InfoSound.
Depending on your level of residual vision, magnifying mirrors could be helpful for specific tasks that you may need to carry out on a regular basis, like applying eye drops, shaving or putting on makeup. And according to Nick Collins, a low vision advisor from Optima Low Vision Services, which sells magnifying mirrors, their usefulness is often overlooked.
Magnifying mirrors are an underrated low vision aid, in my opinion, because a lot of people think about mirrors as being something for vanity, but it's not, absolutely not. This is very important for many people, putting on makeup and things like that, and shaving properly and making sure your personal care is good. But it's also useful, if somebody's putting in eye drops and things like that, and they find it difficult to do themselves, this is really important. You can have different strengths of magnification with magnifying mirrors. It's not a broad range, so you're not going to have a huge step in magnification choice that you would with a traditional hand or stand magnifier, but they typically will have a lower power magnifier and then a more powerful magnifier. Some of them are combined, actually. You can have a combination of the two. But what you need to remember is typically with stronger magnifying mirrors, you'll have to have your eye or what you're looking at close to you, because if you're too far away, it'll look a bit distorted, like those sort of fairground mirrors. So you want to be nice and close to it. If somebody's vision is very, very different when they take their glasses off to when they've got their glasses on, if they're needing to take their glasses off to do the task, they don't see half as well, so a magnifying mirror can be very useful. Other times we don't often think is if one eye is very different to the other. So normally with both eyes open, using their better eye, they can read and do most things relatively well. But when they have to shut that good eye, if they're putting on makeup or if they're putting eye drops in and they can't see through that better eye, the magnifying mirror could be a very useful tool.
You said that the magnification strength, there isn't a huge range in terms of magnifying mirrors. What kind of range are we talking about? And interestingly, how does that compare with, for example, the high street mirror, which, you can have a 1 times on one side, you flip it over, and it has some form of magnification in it. How do the proper ones designed for vision impaired people sort of compare with the high street models?
Well, the gauging magnification on a magnifying mirror is a little bit tricky because it's not a like-for-like comparison because it depends on how far you are from the lens and so on. But normally you're looking at about sort of 5 times magnification, and they can go 7, 10 times. I think there's some that even go up to sort of 14 times. It doesn't correspond with, for example, if you used a handheld magnifier. I wouldn't go down that road of comparing like for like. But basically it just gives you far more magnification than you'd normally be getting in a high street shop or so on, because they'll be working with people who don't really need a huge amount of magnification, just a little bit of a boost. So with these magnifying mirrors, it just gives us that bit extra magnification for people who struggle with using their half mirror and so on.
And the light situation always crops up when one talks about any sort of magnifier. You're also saying distance is critical, so you don't get too much distortion in what you can see in the mirror. Putting light and the way you're using a mirror together, how careful do you have to be in getting it right so you maximise the benefit of having a magnifying mirror?
Well, it can be tricky. Sometimes you can get away with the ambient light in the room, but quite often you'll benefit from an extra task light. Again, reflections with a mirror, guess what, is going to be quite tricky. So making sure that the light isn't blasting into your eye or anything like that, but making sure you get a nice, even spread of light. Again, the way to judge that is that if you've got an external angle poise or an external task light, to use that. Sometimes your general bathroom lighting typically is quite bright anyway, so that tends to work quite well. It is possible for some of the magnifying mirrors to come with inbuilt lighting. So it'll have the mirror itself, but around it will have LED lighting as well. So you have the combination of the magnifying mirror with the light as well. The problem with that is that light is not adjustable. So if it's not bright enough or it's too bright, there's not much you can do about that. But typically your good, well-lit bathroom will give you quite a lot of light for you.
And importantly, I'm guessing it's the light, because you're talking about the kind of mirrors that might have illumination that then throws the light back at the face. That's where you want the light, not bouncing off the mirror.
Certainly, yes. Yeah. So making sure you've got an even spread of light across your face or wherever you're looking to do. So if you're shaving or if you're putting makeup on, or, I did talk about eye drops is sometimes challenging for people to administer on their own.
Would most of these mirrors typically be on some sort of stand that you put on a surface, or can they be mounted in other ways?
Well, you can have your compact ones that you sort of flip out and hold yourself, but I find most people tend to prefer ones that it's on like a gooseneck, sort of a flexible gooseneck arm. So you pop one side onto the table and it will keep it steady, and then you can manually adjust the goose arm to where you need it to be.
When one's talking about other types of magnifiers, I know that professionals like you will always stress the importance of matching a magnifier. I'm thinking of a handheld magnifier, for example, for the task that it's going to be used for, and therefore maybe more than one is needed. Does that same thinking apply to magnifying mirrors, or if you get it roughly right, can it be used for just about anything that one tends to do day to day?
It's not an exact science with this, to be honest, because I say people are going to use the magnifying mirrors will vary across each person. But if you can, try it out first. That's a great example. But also there are some magnifying mirrors which have a combination. So they'll have one side will be, let's say, 5 times magnification, and if you flip it around, it'll be 10 times. So depending on your task. So if you want an overview of your face, so if you're shaving or if you're putting makeup on, you use one side, but if you need a bit more magnification, if you're doing your eyeliner or if you've got any sort of eye drops or something that you want a bit more detail with and you don't need to see much of your face, just a small section, you can use a bit more magnification. Because there isn't a huge range of magnification across magnifying mirrors typically, most people, they're sort of between the 5 and the 10 or something like that works quite well.
Now, some of the magnifying mirrors that Optima Low Vision Services sells include a 15 times LED illuminated spot magnifying mirror designed for home and travel. The round 3-inch mirror sits in a silver finish mount that's 4 1/4 inches in diameter. It comes with 3 suction cups for mounting, maybe on a wall. It uses 4 CR2032 batteries, which are included, and the price is £18.60. They also sell 2 adjustable gooseneck mirrors that allow you to adjust the position and angle of, in both cases, a 5 3/4 inch diameter mirror. One mirror has a magnification of 7 times with a chrome and clear acrylic finish, and the gooseneck attaches to a chrome stand for sitting on a surface. It's also supplied with suction cups for mounting elsewhere, and this mirror is priced at £18.60. The other gooseneck mirror is a twin mirror design. It's a 5 times and 10 times double vision vanity mirror with a 5 times mirror on one end and a 10 times mirror on the other. It can stand on either end like a vanity mirror, or it can be attached to a wall using a slide-on suction cup, and this twin mirror costs £26.03. Finally, they also sell a folding 1 times and 10 times LED illuminated mirror with dual LED lights, allowing one or both mirrors to be lit. Optima suggests this could be a travel mirror. It's 4.5 inches wide, 11.5 inches high when extended, and it folds down to 1.5 inches flat. The mirror size is 3 3/4 inches, and the price is £29.73. It uses 3 AAA batteries, which are not supplied. And should you want to find out more about these illuminated and non-illuminated magnifying mirrors, you can phone Optima Low Vision Services on 01 803 864 218. That's 01 803 864 218, or they can be emailed at sales@optimalowvision, that's OPTIMALOWVISION, all one word, .co.uk.
Infosound. Infosound.
With roughly 11,300 titles from which to choose, the Calibre Audio Library feels it can certainly offer a great deal of choice to its 14,000 members. Books can be posted to members on MP3 discs or memory sticks, and they can be downloaded or streamed via their website. Of course, having that many unabridged audiobooks from which to choose, where does a member start? Over 700 new titles were added last year alone, so even existing members may not be fully aware of everything that's in the library. Well, to find out more about how the library is arranged, we spoke to Emma Scott, Head of Literature and Audiobook Production at Calibre, and Emma first told us about their book categories and how these help them to assist members to choose the books they want.
At the moment, we've got 69 different categories, which are made up of the fiction and non-fiction areas, and we'll go through and we'll try and tailor-make the lists, basically, for members so that they're receiving the books that they want to receive, really.
So what might a category typically be? I mean, one thinks of thriller as a library category or romance as another, but presumably you've got a fair few more detailed ones than that.
Yes, so there's every type of fiction genre that you'd expect to be there, from sort of horror to spy stories and to detective and mysteries. All of those ones are there. And remember, we try and pare down even more than, say, a public library would to give people the best chance, because our members can't walk in to our library and choose. So we try and give them the best possible chance of finding the books we want, which means we might have more categories than, say, a normal library would. Even within some of the categories, particularly the non-fiction, we have several categories as you were within that category. So, for example, taking something like biography, which usually you just have a general biography section, there are actually 8 other different versions of biography that we have listed, ranging from biography historical, biography entertainment, biography sport, and again, so that we can pare it down really sort of succinctly so that people can get the books that they're actually after. And quite often when we put a new book in, we won't necessarily just catalogue it under one category. So a lot of fiction books, for example, can be set in Victorian times, so they might be historical, but there might be a murder mystery in it, so it might go across 2 categories, and people that enjoy historical might also enjoy that sort of light murder mystery as well. So we try and categorise it in at least a couple of categories so that the books get the best chance of going out for a start, but also people are more likely to be exposed to books that they might not not have realised that they might have liked, and that they can try different things as well.
Do you allow people who may not be too sure what they like, but they know roughly, do you allow the system, your library, to kind of do the choosing for them, bearing in mind you have got all these categories, and if they like one book in the category, they might like another?
Yeah, so initially when people join, we might just ask them to choose categories just to get them going, and that will mean that the library chooses for them in effect, so the system will send them out books from that category. But as they go along, what we would really like is for members to choose authors and titles that they would like to read, and that's really just so that they are getting the books that they want to listen to. So although it's absolutely fine to have a list of just categories, and if you're happy for us to choose the books, that's not a problem, but eventually what we really like, just so that we know that people are getting the books that they want, is for people to let us know. And we have a quarterly document called For Your Ears Only, which lists all the new books going in, and members can sign up to that and they can receive it in whatever format they want. So that then aids them as well to choose their next books too.
What about existing members? Do you find that, because after all last year you produced over 700 new books, so it's changing all the time, do you think that existing members are aware of just how the library is growing, and can they pick up on the latest titles and everything else through, for example, your quarterly magazine?
Yeah, so again, if somebody's joined a while ago and they just joined for interest, they might not necessarily be aware, although our membership services team will go through it with them, but they may not necessarily be aware that that is an option and they can choose their own book. So it's always worth, particularly if people feel they're not getting the right books, let us know, because we can sort it out in very quick time for them, and we can then obviously sign them up to For Your Ears Only, for example. All the information is updated every month on our website, so all the new books go in, so if people have access and can access the internet, then all of that information is also on our website, and they can also add their own books from there as well. So if they want to add it to their postal list, they can do, and it then helps them to choose the books that they want. So yes, absolutely, if there are members out there that aren't quite sure and not getting what they want, then just let us know, because what we want is to tailor make the list for them so that they know that they're getting the right books.
Now, new members to the Calibre Audio Library pay a one-off administration fee of £35 for adults or £20 for those under 16 to join the library. This is paid when someone first becomes a member. After that, there are no subscription charges or any other charges for that matter. And if you'd like to find out more about the Calibre Audio Library, you can phone them on 01 296 432 339. That's 01 296 432 339. Or you can drop them an email to enquiries@calibre, spelt calibre.org.uk. And if you're an existing member, you can always get in touch with their membership services team to get an update on what's in the library and change your book choosing, should you want to.
InfoSound. News and information about living with sight loss. From InfoSound.
The mobile phone market is a pretty crowded place these days, and there are no signs that that's going to change. We hear a lot about the top-end smartphones, the latest offerings from Apple and Samsung and the like, but some people prefer a simpler type of mobile, basically a phone with maybe a few extras. And for someone with vision impairment, sometimes simplest is best. There are one or two very simple mobile phones on the market, and one of the ones that probably fits into a sort of simple plus bracket is the Mini Vision phone. It can do more than just make and receive phone calls, and it does have a display screen, but it's not a touch screen. But interestingly, as we heard from Ash Cross at Sight and Sound Technology, which sells this and other phones, the Mini Vision has a standard physical, tactile phone keypad.
The Mini Vision doesn't have a touchscreen first and foremost, and it also has a physical keypad. It's very hard to find a phone on the market these days with a physical keypad where you can actually press to dial a number or write a text message, for example. If you imagine a blind user might find it very tricky to just use a touchscreen to dial a number even. And the menu system is quite easily laid out. It's in a list view. It's not in that kind of grid that you would find on these modern smartphones. It's just a simple list where you can move up and down a menu to go to the phone application or the messaging application or whatever. It's very easy to use in that sense.
Right. So, and you say no touch screen, but of course about the top 60% possibly of the phone is a screen with that menu you described. Perhaps we could talk about that in a moment. But the tactile element, the bottom 40% of the phone, a standard layout there with a few extra buttons as well, I think.
Yeah, and they're like nicely separated as well. These are quite tactile, so you can easily tell the separate buttons apart from each other. So you've got your standard dial pad, 1 to 0 with the star and the hash key. And then above that, you've got the navigation key in the centre, which will take you up and down the menus. You've got a button in the middle, which is like the OK key to activate that menu. Then you've got your end call key and your call key. Then there's like a menu key and a back key. So it's quite simple in terms of what buttons there are. Makes it nice and easy to navigate.
And the buttons themselves, these tactile buttons, what sort of colour contrast does the phone offer with those?
The buttons themselves are like a white on black, so a nice high contrast colour. The colour of the phone casing is white, and as I say, the buttons themselves are black, so nice high contrast theme.
And the menu system, now, you've said it has this display screen outlining the various things you can do with the phone, which are what?
So it's got the essential parts that you'd expect from a phone. You want to call people, message people, text message. It's essential for like major features. So you've got your phone application, you've got contacts list where you can enter your contacts, it's got messages for text messages, it's got features like alarm, calendar, FM radio, calculator, the weather, notes, and also colour detector built in. It's got a camera on the back where you can hover it over a garment or something that you want to know the colour of, and it will tell you what colour that is.
And you mentioned earlier about the layout of the menu. What options do you have in the sort of visual appearance of that screen? How big the text is, whether it's black on white, white on black or whatever?
You can change the appearance of the screen. Some users prefer like a yellow on blue or black on yellow, yellow on black or whatever. I think by default it's white on black. You can customise it to whatever the user wants really. You can magnify it, increase the size and all sorts of modifications you can make there.
Is this all visual? Is there any sort of speech feedback with this phone, or is it the screen and the adaptability of what you can do with that screen that makes this accessible?
Both really. So the Mini Vision caters for blind and low vision users. When you first turn it on, actually, you'll get a question that says, are you low vision or blind? Basically asking the question whether you want it as a magnifier or if you want the speech as well. You can still turn this feature on and off in the menu system. So that means you can have it just as magnification. You can change all the contrast and that kind of thing. But in addition to that, if you want to, if you're blind, it will speak as you're going through the menus. It's going to echo every key you press and every menu item that you move up and down on. So it can be a phone for the blind.
Now, the cost of the Minivision mobile phone as sold SIM-free by Sight and Sound Technology is £299. If you want the technicalities, it has 512 megabytes of internal memory, which can be expanded to 32 gigabytes using an SD card, which is not included, and it can be connected to 4G, 3G and 2G networks. And should you want to know anything else about this particular phone, including how it can be customised to an individual's choice, you can phone Sight and Sound Technology on 01 604 798070. That's 01 604 798070. Or you can email them at info@sightandsound.co.uk. Incidentally, also in the same family of phones, the Smart Vision 2 is said to be the only smartphone offering a triple interface of touchscreen, physical keyboard and voice synthesis with speech recognition. The basic version of that phone costs £499. You can buy individual add-ons such as OCR, a book reader and GPS, but you can also buy the phone with all these extras included for £599. Again, Sight and Sound Technology can tell you more about the Smart Vision 2 as well. Incidentally, all prices we've mentioned exclude VAT, which should not be paid on these phones if bought by a registered blind or partially sighted person.
InfoSound. News and information about living with sight loss. From InfoSound.
RNIB has opened up new ways for vision-impaired people to talk and support. Until fairly recently, as the name implies, Talk and Support was a collection of telephone-based social groups of blind and partially sighted adults with common interests chatting for a limited time every week. But aware that these days people communicate in a variety of different ways, not just the phone, the charity is now increasing the options for people to communicate with one another via their free Talk and Support service. We asked Amanda Hawkins, Specialist Lead for Counselling and Wellbeing at RNIB, about the new way Talk and Support now works. But we first asked Amanda to remind us about the history of the service.
The service that we offered historically was a number of groups that were facilitated by a dial-in. So we'd get 8 to 10 people together or 6 people together who wanted to talk about a certain topic, whether or not that was about transport or maybe it was about cooking or going to the pub, whatever that connection was. And then we would get a volunteer or a staff member to dial them in for 1 hour a week so they could talk from the comfort of their own homes on a telephone line and get that talk and nourishment and very much support that you get from peers from that way. But that's really sort of a time-consuming way of delivering support. We're not stopping that. We are still going to be offering those people that are engaged in that service that works for them. But what we recognise is that not everybody uses a telephone anymore. I don't have a telephone line at home. Lots of people don't have a telephone line. What we have is mobile phones and computers and smartphones. And what we need to do is look at how people connect in their everyday lives and think about how we can adapt the Talk and Support model to meet the new users that are coming online.
Well, perhaps before we talk about the kind of newer technology, I was interested by what you were saying about these groups that are formed. I presume you're saying they will stay. There must have been quite a few of them, because you could get a group of, as you say, 6, 8 people together who've got a particular interest and who want to carry on discussing that. The possibilities are endless, aren't they?
Absolutely. We had over 500 groups running a week, but it became limited and it became log-jammed. So there were more people that wanted to talk and support that couldn't access, because these groups sometimes, they were running for sort of 10 years.
That's a long time, but I can see how once you get into a group, they become friends as much as anything else.
Absolutely. Yeah, friends and support. And, you know, if you live in a community where you're not surrounded by other blind people, this is a vital line to be able to get that support from other people who share similar issues as you on a weekly basis. And people found it very valuable. But in terms of going forward, we were recognising that not everybody was using the same technology anymore. Things had changed and we needed to adapt with that.
And trying to harness that enormous number of people, I guess people could well be members of more than one group, but how are you going to take that all forward? And you talked about newer technology, mobile phones, computers, tablets and the like. What's the new RNIB Talk and Support looking like?
So the other platforms that we want to offer support on is using your smartphone, WhatsApp groups. So that's a kind of a messaging group. We can match people in the same way as we matched through the telephone Talk and Support into groups. But instead of talking for just 1 hour a week, they can be texting on an ongoing basis and messaging each other to get that support. So a really good example of that is that somebody I talked to recently who has really down and depressed days. His sight is at the very last stages and he has grey days and foggy days. And he said he'd love to just be in a group of like-minded people that when he gets up in the morning and he's feeling really low, that he can just put that message out there to say, I'm having a really bad day, or today's a really foggy day and that's a bad day for me. And then he'll get 6 replies back. And the 6 replies from people who know just how he feels. And he's automatically getting that empathy and support. But he still works and he doesn't have that hour in the day to sit down and talk. So it's just a different way. It's the same support, but in a different way. So that's one thing that we want to do. The other thing is that some people perhaps don't have smartphones, but they may be on email, and they may like a letter, or an email once a week from another person, something they can take time in construction, maybe things they want to say, just using another medium, for example. Another suggestion is that we have a Facebook page, which is something we're exploring at the moment. We ran a lot of book groups through Talk and Support, and we were trying to find an alternative way that we can support the book groups but have more people coming into them. So the idea is to have an open group on a Facebook page where we can post a book that's recommended and worth reading, and people can come in and comment. So again, coalescing people around subjects that matter to them, things that are important, but not necessarily at a local level, at a national level as well.
Now, it strikes me that you are very much trying to embrace everybody, because you talked about emails, and there may well be more elderly blind or partially sighted people who are less comfortable with this kind of social media way of doing things through WhatsApp and Facebook, etc. So it's all come as welcome, I take it.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, my own father's 80. And he doesn't have a landline anymore. So if he lost his sight, the only way for him to access these services is via his mobile phone. He uses WhatsApp to text me on a daily basis. So I think we can't say that older people aren't using these technologies. They are. And as that population moves forward, these will probably be the majority of the ways we communicate. And really it was looking at how do we communicate in our daily lives now? These are the means that we use. And actually, in many ways, the telephone is antiquated for many people. There are a selection of the population where telephone is the only option. So I think if you're perhaps in a care home, we very much still want to be reaching those people. But what we don't want to do is just be isolating that as being the only way. There are lots of other ways that people connect and support each other these days, and we want to make sure that we're using all of those platforms so people feel they can connect. And they don't necessarily want the hand-holding, so we would have a facilitator in that meeting that would be there to connect everybody, whereas once we've connected people on WhatsApp groups, that's their group then. They can go off and do what they want. And it's changing that assumption that people need looking after in that way. Some people might want that safety, other people might just want to go off and do with it what they want to do.
So you just become the kind of facilitator to get things sort of off the ground and up and running, and then they can, if they want, just take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. But they can always come back to us as well if there's an issue. So there's going to be an infrastructure behind that to look after people if they're not happy. I think technology has been great for blind and partially sighted people. It's opened up a lot of aspects of life. So we need to be embracing that. And a lot of people do use these technologies to support each other. There's a lot of support groups online now, and I think we need to move forward with that.
Well, here we are now then towards the beginning of 2020. In quite a lot of what you've been talking about, you've sort of indicated aims, ideas and things you really would like to do in the future. Does that mean that things are still fairly fluid? Do you want to hear from people? Is this going to be a case of you forming what you do with RNIB Talk and Support, responding to what people want? And do you want to hear from people?
If people have got other ways that they want to connect, we'd very much like to hear of those ways. There are other ways that work better for them. But these are things that we are definitely planning to do. If people want to try it out and then give us feedback, that would be fantastic too.
Now, should you want to join a talk and support group, and as we heard, there are a fair number of different groups discussing all sorts of topics and interests, then you can email talkandsupport, all one lowercase word, at rnib.org.uk or phone 020 7391 2218. That's 020 7391 2218. Once you're in touch with them, you can then discuss which method of communicating with fellow talk and support members might suit you best. And, as Amanda Hawkins explained, there are now quite a few ways to choose from. And of course, you can also ask about all the various groups there are, or maybe even see about starting a new one.
InfoSound.